from above, vast red fractured by water. He said, anywhere else I feel out of place, and I want to go back to what I know. At that moment, the image of the coffee fields in front of my house came to my mind. I remember the lonely walk surrounded by tall trees that gladly shared their shadows with me. I come back to where I am, sitting on a rock and looking at the endless warm canyon. I look around and I feel the wind caress my face, the imposing red and orange rocks surrounding me and making me feel little. I don't know this canyon, and that makes it more exciting and grandiose, even if I feel out of place. From above, I see a fractured landscape, and down below a river surrounded by vast mountains of red rocks and sand. And I feel little, like an ant. I breathe. Is it sad that I still like burgers? I lived in Victoria, British Columbia for 2 years, and some of my best memories come from the outstanding beauty of the Canadian West Coast. Beauty meant trees, water, lush, showers, green, green, green. As I was applying to college, I told myself I wanted to be surrounded by that beauty, and I decided to come to Whitman College. On the plane, I was already picturing the trees and constant rainfall. When I arrived in Walla Walla, I was finally able to admire my new home. Yes, there were trees and everything was green on the Whitman campus. Walla Walla was dry, yellow, and mostly flat. Rain, not very often. Not the daily showers I had in BC. This was the American West. In fall 2010, I embarked on an adventure throughout this region to learn about environmental issues by exploring, traveling, and meeting people coming from different backgrounds who would show us the landscape from their perspectives. In my mind, the West was still attached to the greenery I had encountered back in Victoria. The first place I visited was Wallowa County, Oregon, and it was just what I expected. During my time there, I experienced constant rains, and I admired the green conifer forests. However, after I met Jenny Reinhardt and Mike Henneman from the U.S. Forest Service, I started to see that this land was artificially pleasing. I was trained to see it as healthy just because it was green. Jenny and Mike explained that this was a semi-arid forest, adapted to fire, like most forests in the inland West. Also, like in the rest of the West, wildfires have been suppressed for more than a century, disrupting its natural cycles. Conifers encroach, growing one next to the other, the reason why everything was dense and green. This encroachment has raised the amount of fuel available for wildfires, which makes them extremely dangerous. This was only the beginning of the journey. Next, I arrived in Baker, Oregon, where the shrubs, the yellow grasses, the rocks, and the dry incised channels announced the diversity of the region. According to environmental writing Wallace Stegner, this was what the American West was supposed to convey: aridity and hostility. Water was nowhere to be seen, except for a few ponds and small pools where some tiny fish were trying to survive. Creeks were absent since they had been diverted to irrigation channels. Wolves and beavers, deemed a threat to human populations and agriculture, were virtually eliminated from the ecosystems. Trees were cut down to maintain unsustainable industries and livelihoods. Ecosystems have been destroyed. The landscape has changed, and what I was looking was not healthy. Certainly, being ignorant was more pleasant than looking at the reality. I felt betrayed by my sense of human development, my own images of beauty, growing tall and green in my mind, and my inability to recognize any progress in sick and dying landscapes. I was raised believing that wildfires were bad and should be extinguished. Wood was always necessary as a source of heat. Irrigation channels were an engineered advantage for people's development, a victory of humankind over nature. Cows were domestic animals that offered their meat and milk for a balanced diet. Back in the 19th century, people had come to the region in search of fortune, land, food, a place where they would be able to succeed. Agriculture, growing population, lumber, and water created immense opportunities for those newcomers, and much was squandered. The new immigrants transported their livelihoods from the humid East to the arid West, forgetting to take the time to learn from a place older and wiser than them. In the end, it is a tragedy where decent people trying to make the land green and productive ended up making it sterile. Back in Oregon, Suzanne Fowey, a U.S. Forest Service hydrologist, explained the group why there was hope as I began planting green and yellow bunches of willow in the riparian areas of a nearly dry creek. Hide the leaves from elk and cattle, so they have a chance, she said. If these branches grow to be fully developed willows, they will be part of the saviors of the land. Willows can hold soil, which holds water and fills in channels. Eventually, beavers might come back to build dams, which would change the land completely. Water would flow the dry creek beds, creating better habitat for a greater diversity of plants and animals. There would be water all year round, even during the dry summer, where it is more needed for agriculture. Suzanne injected her passion and energy in me, but it is difficult to tell if the land will become healthier. Culture takes a long time to change, and agriculture is the best example. In the West, the price for cows to graze on public lands is subsidized by the government, encouraging people to continue practices that destroy them. At the same time, Americans want their beef, and some prefer it local and grass-fed. If we live in the West, we think it's better if it comes from the West. Few of us question the impact of eating a juicy steak or a tasty burger. As the population in the region keeps growing, more resources are going to be used. Our consumption will continue to damage the land, unless we adapt our practices and culture to what surrounds us. I'm only beginning to understand the complexity of ecosystems, and it is part of our nature to be afraid of change. I'm no longer assuming that green equals healthy. I see the dry channels eroded by cattle, but I still eat beef, trying to choose local, organic, grass-fed when I can. I cannot blame people who came to the region here 150 years ago and carved their destiny along with the regions. I can blame cattlemen when the system is both blessing and cursing them. I am part of the system, part of the problem, and I can also become part of the solution. In the end, people like Suzanne can make a difference in a small place, in a few people's mind, and that gives me energy. The West has to change, and the system has to evolve, and I'm excited to meet people who are actively questioning the directions it should take. I now understand that the West is just as diverse as people's reasons to come here. I came for the rain, the trees, the water 5 years ago. Now I'm here enjoying the mountains and the desert, learning to see beauty in yellow, orange, and red, something I had never expected. I'm excited to confront my fear of change and to explore new kinds of beauty. I want to go back to Baker in 5 years and see that land transform from willow branches who hopefully had the chance to grow tall. Maybe I will see a beaver dam reminding me that change is truly possible.